An invisible man can rule the world. No one will see him come, no one will see him go. He can hear every secret. He can rob and wreck and kill. That was my attempt at an impersonation of Claude Rains. I kind of sounded more like Mark Hamill trying to do an impersonation of Claude Rains, but anyway, hi, welcome to End Credit Reviews, on episode of After the Credits on End Credit Reviews. It's just me, Tyler, this time from End Credit Reviews, and this is my review on The Invisible Man. Now, of course, this is not the first Universal monster movie in the Invisible Man series, so if you want to check out my review on the various Invisible Man movies by Universal Studios, click in the link in the description box below. So previously, before this movie was ever supposed to happen, it was supposed to be a part of that whole shared universe thing, the dark universe, but because The Mummy with Tom Cruise didn't do so well with audiences, they're like, okay, we're gonna kind of stop the whole blockbuster stuff. We're going to try to make more smaller but scarier movies, and I feel like it's a really good direction to go in personally. And the movie was written and directed by Leah Winhell. Sorry, I keep messing up names. Sorry about that. I'm not really good at them, but I digress. So he was the writer and director of this really good sci-fi movie called Upgrade. If you haven't seen that one, I definitely recommend it. So in this new reimagining of The Invisible Man, it takes place in the contemporary setting, and it's about a woman named Cecilia, played by Elizabeth Moss, who leaves an abusive relationship with a man named Adrian Griffin, played by Oliver Jackson-Cohen. Time goes by, and apparently he may have killed himself, but then throughout time, Cecilia feels like they may not be dead, and various strange occurrences start to happen, to the point of her suspecting that Adrian must be invisible. Now, the movie itself, I like how it's a horror movie. I like how it's not trying to be, oh, let's just shove in a cinematic universe, let's get it going, like The Mummy, because that movie was just trying to rush things too quickly. With this one, I did like how small it was. It was definitely very focused and definitely more coherent than The Mummy with Tom Cruise. And I know it's not really saying much that's better than The Mummy with Tom Cruise because, I mean, trust me, throw a rock and you'll hit a better movie than The Mummy with Tom Cruise. But alright, so enough with that tangent. So I thought the movie was pretty good. I liked it. I don't think it's an amazing movie, but I do like how, again, it's definitely more horror movie focused. And at the same time, I do like the various cinematography movements of kind of the camera kind of panning over from one side of the room to the other, causes some dread, and it makes your eyes wander around the screen like, oh, what's gonna happen? Is an object gonna lift? What's gonna happen with that? And I did like how they definitely set up the atmosphere with it, which I really did like, setting in the paranoia for the main character. Also in the movie, you probably saw this briefly in the trailer, but there's a sequence where the Invisible Man interacts and fights some security guards, and the cinematography on that was very similar to the director's previous movie, Upgrade, so I thought that was very effective, that whole kind of one-take motif. I really liked that a lot. So as for the cast of the movie, I felt like Elizabeth Moss did a pretty good job in the movie. Part of me felt like she was maybe mildly miscast, but not painfully miscast as Benicio del Toro was in the remake of The Wolfman from 2010. I just felt like, yeah, she did a good job. I just felt like maybe there was another actress they could have gotten, but maybe because, again, the budgetary restrictions they had in the movie, because originally it was supposed to be a much more expensive movie with Johnny Depp in it, but after they decided to make it a much smaller movie, not really a blockbuster scale, they couldn't afford to get someone like Johnny Depp, so it made sense why they cast someone like Elizabeth Moss in this new reimagining. Now, personally, I know Elizabeth Moss best from the TV show Mad Men, which I think is a really great show. I highly recommend it, and an unpopular opinion of mine, I actually prefer that over Breaking Bad. But speaking of television, I felt like it was a little ironic that Elizabeth Moss was in this movie, because earlier on, many years ago when she was a kid, she voiced a character on an episode of Batman the Animated Series called See No Evil, where in that episode it was about a man who actually used a suit to make himself turn invisible, and I felt like that was a little ironic because in the movie she's dealing with someone who is also invisible himself. Now, with the guy who plays the Invisible Man in the movie, Oliver Jackson-Cohen, a lot of people aren't familiar with this actor, which I'm not surprised by, but I remember him from the TV show Dracula that was on NBC that lasted one season. I thought it was a pretty decent show, but And personally, I'm not that surprised in retrospect why it got canceled, because it was kind of pushing a certain agenda, if you know what I mean. But anyway, so I liked how in the movie he did talk, but it wasn't very often. I like how, again, very suspenseful, and it did build up attention, which I did like. The various reveals of him in the being invisible I thought was very effective. I really liked that a lot. So anyway, I'm going to get into some spoilers for this one, so if you don't want to be spoiled for this movie, fast forward to this part. So anyway, so in spoiler territory, I felt like the movie has some good suspenseful moments here and there, but there's some parts in the story where I felt like it was kind of iffy. Like the whole part where his brother, played by Michael Dorman, was, I guess, sort of in on it, but then they were trying to trick the audience like, oh, he was the Invisible Man the entire time, and oh, the other guy you thought it was, Adrian, was being held against his will. I felt like it was a little convoluted a bit towards the end and kind of didn't make too much sense for me. And I know that in the middle of the movie she calls an Uber driver, but again, I felt like it was a bit overly convenient that an Uber guy just so happened to be right in the neighborhood. In a way, this movie, at least the opening of it, did remind me of that Sleeping with the Enemy movie with Julia Roberts, because it's a movie about a woman who's trying to get out of an abusive relationship, and she leaves this guy by, she sneaks out of this house, or at least tries to escape from it. And it's very similar to that movie, especially because the home of Adrian Griffin is also by, the ocean, which was very similar to the villain's home location in Sleeping with the Enemy. Now, as for the invisible outfit, was that I was kind of surprised. I wasn't expecting it to actually be an outfit. I was expecting more of the traditional kind of Invisible Man stuff where he injects himself with the formula and he becomes invisible through blood transfusion. However, in this one, it did remind me of the Invisible Woman, where the character becomes invisible with a machine and not necessarily through a scientific mean of liquids and that sort of deal. But also another kind of mild issue I have with it personally is that I felt like they kind of revealed what Adrian looked like way too early in the movie, because in the previous Invisible Man movies, at least in the best ones, the Invisible Man from 1933 and the Invisible Man Returns from 1940, was that they kept the identity of the title character a secret. We didn't know what Claude Rains looked like or Vincent Price looked like watching those movies, so it wasn't revealed towards the end of the movie, and I felt like they should have kept his face kind of hidden in a way, or at least kind of secretive until kind of towards the end of the movie. That would have been more satisfying and more of a nod to those movies. And I know it's not going to be a carbon copy of those old movies, I'm not saying that, but at the same time, I just felt like, in some ways, I can understand the creative liberties they're taking with it, and I will say, yeah, I like it, but again, there are some mild, issues here and there that I have with it, and kind of pacing-wise, I did feel the length towards the second half of the movie. It started to kind of wear down a little bit for me. So as for The Invisible Man, I think it's a movie that's definitely one of the better Universal monster movies made in the past roughly 20-something years. Yeah, it's a hell lot better than The Mummy, Tomb of the Dragon Emperor, and of course the Tom Cruise Mummy movie. And yeah, it's more competent than the Wolfman remake and The Mummy Returns. I'm just kind of debating whether or not if I like this or Dracula Untold more. I'm kind of leaning a little bit more towards Dracula Untold just because of kind of entertainment value, but I do strongly prefer the Brendan Fraser Mummy as well as Van Helsing with Hugh Jackman. Again, they're just more impressive movies to me, at least, and I love those movies, but this one I think is pretty good, and I definitely am liking the direction that Universal's going with Blumhouse Entertainment, and I'm just really hoping that if they do still want to do some kind of shared cinematic universe thing, that's fine, but kind of take your time with it, be patient, and The Invisible Man is definitely an example of definitely the right kind of direction to go in, so in ways it could be better, and yeah, it's definitely not as great as the 1933 version with Claude Rains, or even The Invisible Man Returns with Vincent Price, which I think is an underrated movie. So anyway, as for The Invisible Man, the 2020 version, I would give it about 3 stars out of 4. So anyway, this is Tyler from End Credit Reviews, and I hope you enjoy this episode of After the Credits on End Credit Reviews, and I hope to make a lot more in the future. Please like and subscribe.